අපි එනකන් ඉන්න ඕනේ නෑ. සර් වීඩියෝ කෝල් එකකින් කනෙක්ට් කරමු.
හරි.
ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකෙන් එනකන් ඉන්නේ නැද්ද?
මොකටද? ක්ලේම් එක අප්‍රූව්ඩ්. යන ගමන් කෑෂ් ගමු.
පිස්සුනේ.
නෑ ඒ ෆෙයා ෆස්ට් එකේ හැටි.
රස්තිය අදුවක් නැති මෝටර් ඉන්ෂුරන්ස්. වැඩේ ෆෙයා ක්ලේම් එක ෆාස්ට්. හොඳම ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකට.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining today's webinar on the topic of trends shaping the FMCG industry. Today's session is sponsored by Fairfirst Insurance, and we wish to thank Fairfirst for being our partner today. And let me also warmly welcome all our panelists and our moderator for this morning, Mr. Charita Subasinghe, President Retail Sector of John Keells Group, Mr. Damit Aberatna, Factory Manager of Unilever Sri Lanka, Mr. Chalendra Patirana, Head of Regulatory and Scientific Affairs of Nestle PLC, and our moderator for this morning, Mr. Ruan Kumara, Assistant VP, Head of Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs, Consumer Food for Ceylon Cold Stores. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for accepting our invitation for this morning. And we wish to start this session in a bit. But before that, let me kindly request all of you, all participants, to keep your microphones on mute and also your cameras switched off throughout the session. And at the end of the session, you can use the chat option to send in your questions, where the moderator will pick it up and address with the rest of the panelists. So thank you very much once more, and I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Ruhan Kumara. And thanks again to our sponsor, Fairfirst. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ruhan.
Thanks, Amanda. And good morning and Ayubon to all of you. My name is Jain Ruan Kumara, and I work as Head of Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs, Consumer Fed Sector of John Keells. I have over 20 years of experience in FMCG food and beverages sector. I have previously worked for Fonterra and Coca-Cola in R&D, quality, regulatory, and public affairs. I also serve as industry representative of the Food Advisory Committee of Ministry of Health and chairman of Food and Beverages Steering Committee of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. My background is I have BSc Agriculture degree specialized in food science from University of Peradeniya, MSc from University of Sri Jawadanapura, and MBA from University of Colombo. So in this webinar, as Amanda mentioned, I'll be playing the role of moderator, and during next 1.5 hours, we'll be covering a few key areas. Number one, key industry trends seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Number two, consumer behavior and purchasing patterns, including digital adoption. Number three, supply chain impact and resilience. Number four, regulations faced by the industry in 2020 and expectations for 2021. As Amanda mentions, to do this, we have the patronage of 3 veterans in the industry, whom I will introduce to you soon. Once the presentations are over, we will have 10-15 minutes of Q&A. So you could post your comments or questions in the chat box while the presentations are going on or after the presentations. We all understand that only general questions can be answered here, not any company specific. Right. So for the benefit of those who are new to FMCG, I would like to start with a small introduction to FMCG here. FMCG or fast moving consumer goods are products that are sold quickly and at relatively low cost. FMCGs are called CPG also in certain part of the world. In Americas, they are called consumer packaged goods. They have a short shelf life because of high consumer demand or because they are perishable. These goods are purchased frequently, are consumed rapidly, are priced low, and are sold in large quantities. If you take the overall consumer goods, this is the largest segment, which account for more than half of the consumer spending. They are divided into many categories also, like processed food like cheese, cereals, prepared meals, beverages, baked goods, fresh, frozen and dry goods, cosmetics, medicines, especially the OTC, over-the-counter drugs, and office supplies like pens, pencils, and etc. So with that introduction, I would like to share with you some food industry related trends across Asia. During the pandemic and after the pandemic became sort of a normal, a new normal. Here I have a small presentation, a few slides, which I will share now. This study has been done, hope you can see the screen. This study has been done by a company called AI Palette. So they have done the study in India and ASEAN or ASEAN markets like Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, and all those ASEAN countries. So I'm just sharing you the outcome of that presentation done by them, and so that you could have some startup for this session. Right. According to this study, they have checked how each of the consumer perceptions have got changed over the time. So as you could see in the title, convenience is important for consumers as they seek homemade, natural and diet specific meals in absence of usual domestic help. So at the startup, at the beginning of the situation in January to April last year, the health, need for health has increased. But with time now, when this becomes sort of a new normal, taste also is coming back apart from health. So you could see that in the next slide. You could see now this is the trend of taste. It was sort of stable before, and during the start of the pandemic, that has declined tremendously, and after that, it's again picking up. Similarly, same period, health, need for health related food has increased and is sort of stabilizing here. So because of this consumer need, there is high surge in launch of new products that bear immune system boosting claims during the pandemic. So you could see here in India market, turmeric, tulsi and ginger milk has come up. Herb and seeds bread, a new product. Then probiotic curd, of course, has been there in other markets, but probably a new, it has had an increase in sale. So health related products. Then ease of preparation. Fine dine restaurants and even quick service restaurants, they have pivoted to delivery of do it yourself, DIY, do it yourself meal kits, and gourmet grocery to offer convenience amid lack of house help. So so there is an increase in do it yourself kind of meal kits for ease of preparation. And some of the fast food kits cater to consumer craving of their street foods. Like here, various restaurants has introduced popular street food kits um, and kits with recipes for biryani and burger have come up. So ease of preparation is another area that has got increased. Um, right. Then natural. Consumer demand for organic and natural foods is high, driven by focus on overall fitness and holistic health. So you can see that there's an increase of 7.48. I mean, this need natural. So consumers are focusing on overall fitness and health. So the demand for those foods that are organic, natural, and come with claims like pure, real, and 100% natural is growing. Then they are exploring vegan, vegetarian, and keto diets. As you know, keto diets are low in carbohydrates and high in proteins. There are more offerings, product offerings in retail brands of those categories. Right. Now let's look at what are the growing and declining food and beverage categories. As you could see, fresh and dry cooking essentials have, as well as frozen and instant foods, have continued to grow, driven by the need for home cooking and convenience. So freshly cooked here there is an increase, and here ready to eat there is a huge increase. So fresh food, long shelf life, cooking essentials like flour, rice, lentils, spices, they have an increase. Same time, frozen and instant foods also having a huge increase, especially frozen food and some of these noodles, instant food, and ready to eat. Then consumers relying on natural and Ayurvedic remedies for boosting their immunity. As you could see here, garlic is having 57% growth, and these other things like herbs, lemon, honey, turmeric, which are used for herbal hot drinks, have also got increased during the time. And things like ginger, ashwagandha, and Ayurvedic things have increased as well. So there is high interest in plant-based options, driven by focus on vegan or vegetarian diets. So you can see here, plant-based has increased several folds, and out of animal-based, eggs and chicken have got the highest increase, whereas some of these items like pork have got impacted by supply chain issues in India. But having said that, eggs and chicken is having a high increase. And stacking also continues. I think in Sri Lanka also this happened because children are at home, and most of working crowd also are working from home. So therefore, things like snacks have an increase, especially bakery and snacks, and even dairy has a significant increase. And due to reduced outdoor activity because of the close down of eateries and restaurants, things like carbonated beverages and burgers have affected. Here, burgers have a decline of 13%, carbonates 20% in India. So instead of that, black tea, green tea, because of home consumption, have got increased. Right. What are the patterns and opportunities that we have seen in India? As I mentioned, ready to consume or ready to cook products are driven by at-home consumption. So there are a lot of ready to cook and ready to consume products have come in. Then food startups and QSRs, they were tapping into vegan products after launching specific vegetarian products in the India market. there are a lot of startups, new companies have come up with new solutions. Then gut health, you can see the people's need for immunity has increased 106.8%, which aid digestion has increased. Probiotics 9% increase, and you could see in these graphs also the same. So there's an opportunity for products having immunity, aids digestion, or having probiotics. That is why these type of products have come up. Food innovators and influencers promoting probiotics for gut health and immunity, driven by the high consumer awareness and interest in those type of products. Right. After having having a look at India market, now let's look at ASEAN also, or ASEAN also briefly. There are also health, the need for health related foods have increased, and therefore there are a lot of new products which have come in, like beta glucan chocolate bowls, vitamin C jelly, then gut health and immunity boosting crackers, and so on and so forth. For taste, they were preferring the local authentic taste, the familiar ones, but with the need for spicy on the rise. So for Sri Lanka also there's an opportunity. There is a increase in need for spicy taste or spices in food. Then ease of preparation. Do-it-yourself milk tea cocktails, mocktails, or mocktail kits to cater to the consumer need for easy to make tasty beverages at home. Ease of preparation. Again, some new kits that have come in. Examples. And to break the monotony, some of these markets, they wanted to have new innovative flavors, because they were not having that opportunity to go out and have new taste new flavors out there in the market. So they wanted to experience that at home. So there was a lot of opportunity for innovative flavors to come in. So there were various new additions with organic and natural properties also. They were popular in e-commerce channels to attract consumers. So natural is coming up, especially in Malaysia and Thailand. In Indonesia and Philippines, it's slightly different. They wanted low sugar and plant-based proteins. And what are the growing and declining food and beverage categories? As you could see, across Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, fruits and vegetables are having an increase. Same time, long shelf life products also are having increase, but some products are having decline in some specific markets. Like in Malaysia, noodles has declined, and Singapore also there is a decline in noodles, but Philippines there is an increase. In Indonesia and Thailand, quite a similar situation, but Indonesia there is not much of growth in fruits, but and at the same time there's a decline in rice, and they have increase in noodles and vegetables. So this is how the fresh sector, fresh category, and long shelf life food category is performing in those markets. Especially Singaporeans, they are relying on traditional ingredients, while Malaysians and Filipinos, they want to explore things like moringa and virgin coconut oil. So you can see that there are new things being tried. Seafood is declining in most markets in Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines. As I mentioned before, also there is a rising interest in plant-based alternatives, especially in Singapore and Philippines, for animal-based proteins. The rate of growth of bakery and snacks is relatively slower in Singapore, but in Malaysia and Philippines continues to strong, dairy also is growing. There's a decline in cookies and cakes in Indonesia, but in Thailand, that trend continues. In Singapore and Malaysia, they are showing some interest in quick service restaurant foods. When the dining out opens, they were opening up slightly, and the interest in milk tea was less in those markets. In Indonesia and Thailand, the interest for milk tea was still there. They continue to rise, but burgers, pizzas decline, especially in Indonesia. But Thailand continue to have the same. So, what are the patterns and opportunities that one could tap into in this new normal in those markets? As we discussed before, also plant-based protein products being launched in quick service restaurants and retail are not targeting a niche group, but they are now becoming, all type of dieters' choice. So there is a huge trend of plant-based proteins in those markets. So this is how some of the popular QSRs and retail players have responded to that need. They have come up with new products out of plant-based proteins. And in Singapore and Thailand, probiotics are on the rise. Probiotic yogurts and probiotic dairy products are on the rise. And gut health and immunity also, and therefore there are new products which have come in to help in those markets, the consumers in those markets. So in terms of growing and declining food and beverage categories, when you compare fresh versus long shelf life, demand for fresh food and staple grains like rice is still driven by the growing trend to cook at home. But in Indonesia, rice has declined. As we discussed, immunity boosting ingredients, plant-based and animal protein, bakery, snacks and dairy, cafe or restaurant food and beverages. In certain markets, they have, most of the markets they have increased, whereas there are some differences in some markets. So these are the opportunities: plant-based protein and dairy alternatives, and probiotics for gut health and immunity in those markets. With that, I conclude my presentation. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Charita Subasinghe. Charita is the president of retail food sector of John Keys Group. He has been working there since 2003. He was the sector financial controller also for some time at the same group, and is an associate member of Chartered Institute of Management Accountants UK, as well as diploma holder of the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK, and he also holds an MBA from University of Colombo. So Charita, I want to you. I have a question to ask from you. During this pandemic, what did you see happening in the customer behavior during the last year, 2020?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me on the panel. Let me start off by taking from where Ruan concluded in his presentation, where he talked about the different behaviors in the different other countries. Unfortunately, we do not have such a detailed understanding of what did happen in Sri Lanka, because I don't think anyone has really collated. But let me talk through the experience we have had as a retailer and our conversations with the different stakeholders, specifically the customer, so that I can relate to some of the trends that Ruan talked about that happen in India and the other subcontinent countries. So when the first pandemic hit us, the first lockdown, all that happened, we wanted to understand what the customer sentiments were. And one thing that came out was the health and safety was one of the biggest concerns the customer did have. Secondly, was the income source was getting impacted with some certain the salary cuts, as well as certain customers losing their income streams to all that also. Another aspect that also did happen was that they were looking at convenience. Convenience, if I'm to explain a bit on the convenience, is that they wanted, again, it was linked to some extent with the health and safety concerns about getting the stuff delivered to their home, as well as convenience also came from the fact that, again, because of the health and safety aspect of it, they did not want to waste too much time going into 2 or 3 locations, but just going into one location, doing their stuff, their grocery and FMCG purchase and coming off. Those were the 3 main concerns the customers did have with our from that aspect, as well as in terms of the different behavior as well, was that there was, for once, I think a big change that also did happen was the work from home culture, with many people working from home. So when they're working from home, as well as their children also going online and doing their studies at home. So the culture also at the home changed, where they were spending more time at home rather than being on the go, where they were previously spending a lot of time on the road, commuting to all that aspect, where they at that time, so all that did have an impact on their the consumption. And consumption, a lot of home cooking did happen, and they were looking at different aspects, ingredients in the market that could help them. There were a lot of engagement with a lot of recipes that were happening. A lot of cooking programs were being watched by different parties, and so their consumption overall did change as well. So what it meant to the retailer as well as the FMCG business was that certain aspects of the FMCG business also did start to move ahead. Certain organizations were having record sales because the home consumption was also increasing. And what it would mean for certain categories did grow. The ingredients category, they were looking for different products that they did not purchase before, and that did also happen. In terms of your purchasing behavior also did change. I mean, online purchase did grow significantly. I can tell you from experience that we have had an online business for many years, and we were doing not more than 100 or less than 100 orders on a daily basis. And when the first lockdown came, we got into a spin, but by the time the second lockdown came, we were doing about 10,000 orders on a daily basis. And as of today, we are catering to over 3,000 orders on a daily basis. So you could see that now people are looking for different omni-channels of doing their purchasing rather than physically going in. So summarizing customer behavior, the concerns, and because of that, the behavioral change and how they were purchasing as well. How the different retailers as well as new entrepreneurs also emerged in this context to service the new norm that was established. You could see that different parties were moving into e-commerce business, or even to the, even with less amount of digitization, even doing some different forms of shape deliveries. There were also different entrepreneurs who came with home cook meals, different types. Because now, also what was also happening is that the customers, because of the health and safety concerns, were also not physically going into a restaurant to do their consumption. They'd rather have a restaurant meal at home. So there were different types of entrepreneurs that emerged that helped them. And in that context, cloud kitchens arrived, and the different retailers, different forms of delivery also did happen as well. So in this entire pandemic, there were also the different opportunities that arose. So it has also become, and that has helped different parties to establish different businesses as well. So, Ruan, in a nutshell, this is what has happened during this period from a consumer side, as well as from a consumption side, as well as from different business opportunities that have arisen as well. So, all that you provided there in terms of what has happened in India to all the other countries are happening in Sri Lanka as we speak as well. So, while in a greater, broader sense, it has not been a great year overall, but different FMCG opportunities have also arisen during this period. So that's how I would take my take on what has happened in 2020. That's how I will look at it, Ruan.
Yeah, thanks for that, insight, Charit. And in fact, you have explained as to how the consumers' behavior got changed in Sri Lanka, and things like online ordering and new entrepreneurs coming up with home cooked meals and things like that. So in this context, I have another question to you. In this context, how did the FMCG businesses and the retailers responded to this current situation, current consumer behavior? Sorry.
I think in that, Damit from Levers as well as the gentleman from Nestle possibly would be in a better position to answer that from a manufacturing point of view, but as well as a supply point of view. But overall, what I could also say is that some of the biggest challenges most of the manufacturers also did have, as well as the suppliers did have, were the different constraints that came in with import constraints also coming. So while certain imported ranges went off the shelf, that also led to a lot of opportunities as well. Import substitutes did come up as well, where there is, and that is something that possibly is an opportunity for 2021 as well. How do you, during this, so if you look at it, it's very likely that 2021 and there will be a lot of constraints coming from imports, either because of exchange control issues or supply chain, because what also has happened is that the world specialized on certain categories of production. But when a situation like this happens, the logistics, when it is impacted, there are going to have various issues on the supply chain as well. So the opportunities that also arises with this is that, are there any local manufacturers who could find solutions for the customer? If a particular product is not available, and of course there is a demand, pent-up demand for that product, how would a manufacturer be able to maximize on this opportunity? can they come with a credible product that can satisfy this customer? That is I think, an opportunity available for different manufacturers as well. That's the type of conversation as a retailer we are having with different manufacturers also, is that, look here, there was this A product that was purchased by a customer. Now this A product is not there. How can you use this opportunity and provide a suitable product that can satisfy that demand? So that's the type of, while there are also in small ways that different manufacturers have stepped up to cover that gap, there are still opportunities available. Today, on our shelf, there are at least 500 to 600 such products that have gone off the shelf purely because of the import restrictions. And that still has not been covered by a credible offering from any of the FMCG businesses. So I think this opportunity should not be missed out. And all what, Ruan, you presented in your presentation is the behavior of the Sri Lankan consumer as well. They are looking for convenience, they are looking for substitution, they are looking to cook at home, to all that good stuff is also happening in our country as well. So still there's opportunities that can be covered by the Sri Lankan FMCG businesses as well.
Thanks, Charit. And in your answer, you talked about some import restrictions and therefore the need for import substitution also. I mean, that is a sort of a challenge as well as an opportunity for most of the manufacturers as well as retailers. Do you see any other challenges that can come in 2020? And if you see any of those challenges, what would be the sort of response from the industry or
I
the
think
business?
2021, I think we should look at it a little more optimistically than 2020. 2020 was an year that got impacted, and one thing that also happened, if you compare, the customer confidence was at an all-time low. I think that 2020 was the year that possibly we all were optimistically waiting, purely because after the elections, we were expecting that 2020 would be the year that the consumer confidence would hit an all-time high. Unfortunately, so it was a lost opportunity there. But with the vaccination program coming through, we feel that 2021 would be a year that will have a lot more opportunity than 2020. And in that context, various theories are being floated around world over. They are talking about post-pandemic behavior of the customer. One thing that they're talking about is that when the customer confidence is back, that the pent-up demand can get unleashed, and people will start spending a lot more than they used to spend, or they did spend before the pandemic as well. Now the question is that, as if the FMCG businesses, are we ready to maximize on such an opportunity? And what do we need to do to be ready? So that is the opportunity we see for 2021. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me to tell you exactly how it will pan out, but that will be the best case to be considered, and to plan out for the FMCG businesses, to plan out how they would want to maximize on certain opportunities. I think that is what we should be optimistically be looking at for 2021. So the behavior is going to be that the pent-up demand, how they are going to spend, and just imagine if there is a dark cloud hanging over your head because of the pandemic, and if it goes off due to the vaccine coming into various other aspects, as well as you also would need to also consider that there possibly could be a upbeat on the tourism as well, with the airports opening, vaccine programs around the world, to all that. So with almost a zero inbound tourism in 2020, there's bound to be an upsurge in 2021 as well. So it's I think, as retailers as well as FMCG businesses, how do we now set ourselves to win in 2021 is the question that each of us would need to ask ourselves and be ready. I think that's how I would approach 2021, Ruan.
Thanks. That's great, Charit. I think you have explained to us as to how the consumer behavior has changed and what are the opportunities that are available for the industry to capitalize on. And I think you mentioned that the year ahead is we need to look at that more optimistically with the vaccination program coming in. There'll be more and more opportunities because consumers will start spending more. And as you rightly mentioned, when the dark clouds disappear, with the vaccination program coming in, people will start moving out, and there will be upsurge in demand for some of the products, as well as tourism also will boost the industry opportunity. So thanks, Charit. We will come back to you with more questions when at the end. So I'll turn to the next presenter for the moment. He is Damit Aberatna. So Damit has an MBA from in International Trade and Logistics from University of Canberra and BSc Engineering, specialized in Manufacturing Engineering from University of Peradeniya. He has served Unilever Sri Lanka since 2006, having played various roles in manufacturing, engineering, planning, third-party sourcing and operations, and logistics and customer service. Also, he has had a 3 years international assignment in India, Hindustan Unilever Limited, as regional logistics manager of North India. And he has played the roles of project lead in company's future transformation project also, and he's a JIPM, Japan Institute of Plant Management certified TPM instructor as well. So with that little introduction of Damit, I would like to ask a question from you, Damit. Good morning, and I want to you, Damit. Charita explained what was seen happening in the consumer behavior and how the FMCG businesses and the retailers responded to it, and what is to come in the years to in this year as well as years to come by. In that context, how do you see the supply chain impact and resilience?
All right. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Ruan. Thanks for the introduction as well, and thanks Chamber of Commerce for having me, and thanks everyone for your time. I'll try my best to give some of the knowledge or ideas related to supply chain resilience and the agility we require. Right. So Charita has explained the challenges, opportunities from the market or the business point of view. And to overcome, to seize the opportunity in the market, you need to have a great supply chain, right? So I will explain from the supply chain point of view how this volatile period can be used to seize that opportunity, right? So some of you may know that any evolved supply chain is dividing into 4 key pillars, right? Plan, make, source, and delivery. Right, so I'll go into each sub pillar and I'll explain what are the things what are the challenges as well as what are the things we need to focus on in coming year in our immediate future. Starting with planning, right? Planning again dividing into 2 main functions: demand planning and supply planning. Right, so what is whatever happening in the market dynamics, the identifying the demand and bringing it to the supply chain is doing by the demand planning team, right? So normally, typically a demand planning, we are doing demand planning or the forecasting based on statistical models, based on historical data. We are looking at probably 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months past data, right? And based on that, then you are predicting your future. But what has happened with this current volatility is that you can't highly depending on your historical data, right? So because of that, now you need to shift to a shorter demand cycles, right? So probably if there's the spike in COVID, your hygiene related products are suddenly getting an additional demand, right? Your sanitizers, hand washers, your soaps demand, you can see a spike. So, and probably, so you have typical New Year season, typical Christmas season. Now this season, the consumptions of the season have changed because the consumer behavior, consumer spend, the consumption has changed, right? So, and as Charita said, the post-COVID scenario potential, yeah, so assuming by another 6 months, hopefully by another 6 months, if this is going to settle, then post-COVID, what will happen? What are the categories going to grow? Likewise, for demand plan itself, the way we used to forecast has to be changed to seize the right demand in the market. So the demand planning cycle will be shorter, right? So that's the main thing coming for demand planning. So cycle will be shorter. Then moving into the supply planning side, right? This shorter cycle means your volatility is high, your variations are high, right? So if you are going to maintain a high level of inventory the way normally businesses are maintaining, you will not be able to respond to the demand spikes as well as to respond to the dynamics in the market, right? More than the dynamics in the market, what's happening in in the globe, right? The commodity markets, right? So there's a hyper inflation in current in 2021, right? And you are bound to take price increases, right? So pricing, so that's the reality of any business. So when it comes to price increases, if you are going to maintain 6 months, 4 months stock covers, then you will not be able to get those price increases, and that will impact your profitability, right? So supply planners, they need to maintain lower inventories. So maintaining lower inventories is not that easy, right? So maintaining lower inventories means somewhere we need to compromise. Some other team need to work differently, and that is the team we call manufacturing team, right? So to maintain lower inventory means we need to increase the agility of our manufacturing team, right? So how we are going to do that? So you need to reduce your production cycles, right? So you need to move to a shorter production cycles, right? So probably normally any person with the manufacturing background or the supply chain background knows we love the mass production, right? So that gives you the economies of scale, it reduces your cost, right? But that is not the game now, right? So because of the market spikes, because of the sudden the demand, the requirements, and of the market condition, right? So we need to lower the inventory, and you need to respond to the market quickly. So supply chain, especially the manufacturing plants, need to be really agile, right? So if you are making 200, 300 SKUs in your factory, it will be a really complex situation. But that's where, the good manufacturing facilities are differentiated from average manufacturing facilities, right? So I'm not going to details of how we can do that. I'm just highlighting the trends and the areas we need to focus on. Right. So in addition to that, some other specific challenge related to manufacturing is safeguarding our people, right? So we need to, while we are running the operation, while we are responding to the market demand, right? The first thing is we need to safeguard our people, because COVID risk, I personally believe now we are at the highest level of risk exposure, right? Where number of cases are increasing, and for personal safety, right? We are responsible for our people. We need to make sure their safety. At the same time, we need to run our operations without any disruptions. So how we are going to de-risk, or how we are going to reduce the risk at manufacturing facilities while we are running, and at least for next 6 months, so next 1 year till this entire vaccination program getting fully implemented, right? So we need to focus on that area. For that, there are different manufacturing organizations are using different techniques. Some are zoning, then using different crews, the removing the exposure of the reducing the exposure of people, right? So removing the people to people touch points, right? And the improving the digital the interventions. That's what the manufacturing facilities need to do. So all of these, right? So taking care of our people, then the improving the agility, moving into mass customization, or the reducing the batch cycles. All of these we need to do while managing our cost, because as I highlighted earlier, we are into a inflation era, where the P&Ls are really stressed, right? So manufacturing, we can't afford to increase the cost as well, right? So this is a current challenge, current reality. So any manufacturing plant and any supply chain is facing. The final part is our logistics wing, or the deliver part, right? Again, Charita has highlighted from the business side how online businesses are increasing, how e-commerce is increasing. We were talking about e-commerce for last decade, but this is the year, the 2020 is the year we have really seen the transformation in Sri Lanka. It's a forced transformation with COVID. But logistic function, we need to be geared to seize that opportunity, right? So although we were talking about last mile delivery, we were talking about readiness, when it comes to execution, so we are still not mastered that area, right? So that's the area we need to master. Even the packaging, right? So even so from the design stage itself, now we need to think of designing for e-commerce, right? So that design is different to what we are designing for retail, right? So that part also we need to look at. So and look at the evolved online the markets, right? And get those learnings quickly and replicate the implement it in Sri Lanka. That's one area we need to work on. And again, the people safety, like manufacturing, this is other function who are directly dealing with people, right? Unlike planning or the sourcing function, right? So that part, the safety protocols need to be followed, alternatives need to be there. So geographies like Sri Lanka, we are really small. The logical way is moving with a single distribution center, right, which is giving highest benefit. But when we are looking at the current the volatility, current uncertainty in the market, right, so probably you need to look at alternate distribution centers as well as business continuity plan, right? So if something happens in one of your distribution center, you need to have an alternate place to run. So although this is the currently we see this as a unique challenge due to COVID, but this is we need to get learnings, and we need to ready for any sort of such challenges. Today it's COVID, tomorrow it can be something else. So how you are going to de-risking your operation is the learning we need to get and what we need to implement, right? So one area I didn't touch upon is sourcing, right? The procurement area, where the challenge is completely different, right? So if you are purely depending on imported raw materials and packing material, you are with a huge challenge, inflation, then the shipping related constraints, the vessels availability, connectivity, freight rates, right? There's a huge challenge currently. And so we need to tackle it. And wherever and the import restrictions, so wherever we see the opportunity of localization, this is the time to localize, right? And partnering with local suppliers, developing them, giving them long-term commitments, going for long-term contracts, and building it for future, right? Starting from now, ideally we could have done this the way before this, but never the better late than never, right? So the focus on localization, how we are going to, now truly the localization is giving benefits. So one thing is related to uncertainty, lead times. Second, even the cost point of view, some of the localizations are giving benefits, which we have never explored earlier, right? And one aspect which is going against the rest of the flow is when you come to sourcing, probably you need to increase the inventory, right? So wherever you are depending on the depending on imports, right? So with the current uncertainty, by looking at continuity of the business, by looking at the possible business exposure, probably you need to increase the inventory of certain commodities at your warehouses, right? So that's all from my end. I try to touch upon at least one or two areas related to each sub functions in supply chain, and hope that's going to help you all.
Thanks, Amit. In fact, you have covered the 4 pillars of supply chain: plan, make, source, and delivery. And you were talking about the challenges in demand forecast because traditional data was not easy. Traditional way of doing it was not very easy, and therefore need to up to shorter demand cycles, demand planning cycles. Then supply planning is having volatility, and therefore need to maintain lower inventory. And because of the agility, you need to have agility to cater to that, and with shorter production cycles. Even though manufacturing operations like to have mass production, that is not possible in the current context. And then you talked about safeguarding people, to do things like zoning, maybe bubble operation, and to have digital interventions as much as possible is another challenge. And amidst all this, we need to maintain the cost of operations also, because we are working in a hyperinflation era. So, and in terms of delivery, need to have BCPs in place, business continuity plans in place also was highlighted. Without just even though it's easy to operate from a single distribution center point of view, but it may have a risk, so that you need risk mitigation plans on delivery as well. And then you talked about procurement challenges, and therefore the need for increased inventory of some of those items that are imported probably, and the need for tying up with local co-packers, and finding suitable substitute for some of the ingredients. Yeah. So it was very comprehensive update on the challenges that are faced by the supply chain professionals in this current situation. I would like to ask a few, something more about, you were talking about digitization and IoT kind of interventions, that you said they are having a great value in the current context. And how do you think that we can use digitization to improve the resilience in supply chain?
Yes. So thanks, Ruan. Thanks for the summarizing the entire thing really nicely, right? And regarding the digitization, I will take extreme example, right? Currently, probably some of you have heard of this. There's something called the lighthouse network, right? This is the factories or the supply chains who are truly living a fourth industrial revolution, right? So you can search for it, and I think currently there are around 54 such the sites has been recognized globally, right? And since I am representing Unilever, yeah, one of our factories, the China Hefei factory is also a part of this lighthouse. I'll pick that example and explain to you, right? Where when you come to this COVID type of pandemic, the main barrier is that the people can't go to work, or they can't work in the congested area, right? So they can't work shoulder to shoulder, right? So you need some solutions, right? So this fourth industrial revolution, this is the extreme case where there are factories now, FMCG factories, right? So when you come to automobile and all, this is a common thing. FMCG factories who the operators can work from home, operate their machines from home, complete the automated, running through robots, AI, where the stuff are getting filled in lines and packed, and then picked by the palletizers and all, going into the warehouse. The entire thing is fully automated, where your human intervention has minimized, right? So this example in China, where, right, so they were the first the impacted by the pandemic, but they managed to run their operations because they were ready with this digital the solutions. So they didn't they didn't have this constraint of people, right? So risking people, or the constraint of people, because they were into fully digitization. And so simple example for us, we can use is, right, the again related to COVID, right? So many of us still we are using paper as the way we are approving things, way we are documenting, way we are communicating. We can completely get rid of paper, right? I believe by now most of the businesses, most of the supply chains have already implemented it. But for others, this is a great opportunity. So there you are, one way you are reducing cost as well, and there are simple solutions everywhere, right? Where you are we can completely move out of paper, right? So these are two extreme examples, right? But what we are focusing on each area, again, in plan, make, source, deliver. The going digital is helping, right? So in planning the entire demand planning, capturing even the minor demand surges, demand fluctuations. Now there are models. Now rather than people doing it in Excel or by using the manual algorithms, there are models, the digital models, where you can use manufacturing. There's the huge the many actions with the extreme I have mentioned, right? And even in deliver function. So logistics, right? So logistics also, there are multiple ways, the completely moving out of human touch, and while increasing the efficiencies, while reducing costs, right? So going digital is no more the costlier prospect, or require big capex. So when you come to manufacturing type of digitization, probably, so if you are going for a top end level, yes, robots, cobots and all, you require high capex. But now, so even within the country, there are many suppliers who are providing low cost automation solutions, right? So if we explore, we will see, right? So rather than depending on the European, then moving into Indian or Chinese machines, there are many local parties now geared to deliver low cost the automation solutions, which are reliable, right? So, and so even in sourcing, right, the completely moving into e-tendering now, we see even the even government organizations are moving into the digital platforms, right? So this is the, I think, and even what we are doing today, right? So using collaborative tools like MS Teams, Zoom type of thing. This pandemic has, I think, expedited or the forced these changes in a these are the, I think, the positives out of this. So the entire the last year, the struggle we have faced, now we need to leverage now, right? So whoever leveraging more will get more benefits.
Thanks, Damit. So very interesting, especially this lighthouse networks is a very interesting topic. I think if time permits, I will have a few more questions from you on those new innovations or new concepts that are coming up in the supply chain. With that note, I will now turn to our next presenter. He is Mr. Chalindra Patirana, who works as the Head of Regulatory and Scientific Affairs in Sri Lanka PLC. He has over 12 years experience in food regulatory and quality assurance. His background is BSc Food and Technology from Waimbur University, and he has MSc in Food Science and Technology from University of Peradenian and MBA also. He is one of the members of Food and Beverages Steering Committee of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. So Chalindra will do a brief presentation on global trends in food industry amidst the pandemic, which will shape the global food regulatory network or framework rather. Over to you, Chalindra.
Well, thank you, Rohan. Let me first share my screen with you all. Trust my slide is visible.
Yes, go ahead, Chalindra. Yes.
Okay. Once again, thank you, Rohan, and good morning, everybody on the call. And I want to thank the organizers for inviting me as a resource person today. So we all are well aware that the global pandemic has changed the consumer preferences in new and rather unexpected ways. So like the previous speakers mentioned, changing of these demand patterns and new normal, as we call it today, has an immense impact on the shaping of the FMCG industry, including food and beverages sector. This is for the year 2020-21, as well as beyond. So the scopes and boundaries of food and beverage sector or this industry has been defined by the food laws and regulations in specific countries that is common everywhere. And there's a very tight correlation between the consumer trends and the food regulations, or rather the food regulatory framework itself, as consumer trends shape up the food industry or food and beverage industry. So I believe it's very much valuable to take you all through 5 key global trends that will shape up the food industry in 2021, which will automatically trigger certain changes in the food regulatory environment as well. So not only in our Asian Pacific region, but if you take the global picture, there's an increasing consumer demand for nourishing body and mind from the food and beverages they consume. So this trend has been seen more prominent, especially in this pandemic situation. So especially the areas of immunity, then respiratory tract health, body vitality, etc. have come into the limelight in this scenario. So most of the manufacturers are trying to capitalize on immunity boosting nutrients and ingredients, let it be traditional ingredients or other nutrients coming out scientific researchers, etc. So many are taking product developments or other reformulations in these directions these days. So that is a common phenomenon, not only in this area, everywhere in the world. So, and the competition at this point is becoming intense for claiming on immunity, especially the immunity and like health benefits in food and beverages. And this is the key area nowadays. The food regulators are very much watchful in worldwide as well as in local context. So in Sri Lanka, we are very much being watchful on the communications that we are making on these specific claims, nutrients, therapeutic effects related to foods and beverages. So in Sri Lanka, apart from reinforcing existing regulations on labeling and advertising, the food authorities are deploying more and more resources on surveying on the claims and communications on all media platforms, for an example. Now, the second trend I would like to highlight is the sustainability. So the sustainability as the center of stage for everything that we do. So when it comes to food,
Shalendra, your screen.
Okay, sorry.
Amit, if you can.
Yeah, I'm resharing the screen.
Yeah.
Hope it's fine now.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to food and beverage industry, sustainability is not only spoken in terms of the one or two aspects. It's actually spoken under multiple means, such as environmental impact, then plastics, then food waste, are some of the highlights. So the growing awareness and the environmental literacy, I would call it, among consumers are putting more and more pressure on manufacturers on sustainability, as well as on the other hand, on the lawmakers or the regulators on the same aspects. So due to these demands, the FMCG companies are demonstrating their sustainability commitment beyond just the end product to responsible sourcing and to operational standards, etc. So this is revolutionizing the areas such as packaging, then the transportation, then the water and energy conservations, etc. Right? So local regulatory bodies also, for an example, the Central Environment Authority, too is responding to these growing changes or growing trends in the world as well as in the country. So as an example, at the beginning of this year, we experienced a new gazette, a new regulation being gazetted on banning certain plastic items like single-use plastic sachets, then the inflatable plastic toys, then pesticide bottles of plastics, etc. So I'll move on to the next one. The third point I would like to highlight is the trend for plant-based foods. I think in one's delivery speech also this was mentioned. And so this trend is very much visible across the world nowadays, including our region, Asian Pacific region. So according to certain recent statistics globally, 56% of plant consumers are trying to eat more plant-based foods and beverages, pushing alternative, especially the proteins, to an increasingly mainstream phenomenon. So demand for plant-based products is rapidly expanding beyond just, let's say, burgers analogs. It goes to new types and new variants of novel products, including alternatives for seafood, then plant-based cheese, then ready-to-eat protein snacks, etc. And the beautiful thing is with the new technologies like 3D printing, so it has made alternative meat products also a possibility. And we all know that dairy alternatives being the category which we can call as the early leader or the pioneer of plant-based nutrition. And it is also keep on expanding and evolving. So still these global trends, especially on this plant-based food or these new technologies, new food types may not reach the local shores massively, if I say in that way, but for sure this will happen very soon in time to come. So there will be new regulation or new regulation formulations in the country to welcome or rather to accommodate these new trends in the country. So that is something we can anticipate in years to come. So the fourth trend I would like to highlight is that the consumers are now expecting food labels and communications to provide greater transparency around the entire product life cycle. So consumers seek greater clarity on the nutrient delivery of what they eat and the ingredients composition, then even the origin of ingredients, etc., on food and beverage labels and communications. So there are many regulatory reformulations by local authorities also in recent gazettes, as well as ones yet to come. For an example, I can give you the recent food color coding regulation for sugar, fat, and salt, where the solid and semi-solid foods needs to be displayed with the sugar, fat, and salt content with traffic light labeling. And even at the same time, the forthcoming labeling and advertising regulation, which we are expecting to come in very recent times, the nutrition labeling has been mandatory. So the regulators also responding to the requirements or demands from the consumers, like this consumer base is being evolved throughout the globe. And my last point is on the trends of digital transformation. So if this pandemic taught us anything for business, for me it is that it needs to be agile, like Damit correctly mentioned. So, and it is clear to us that digital transformation is no longer a luxury, but is a basic necessity for everybody. So digitalization is not only about making, rather marketing, advertising, online purchasing, or e-commerce in general. So it is about all the aspects of end-to-end manufacturing process, and it is throughout the product life cycle. So however, the regulatory framework, if you take in that way, the regulatory framework pertaining to the e-commerce or the digitalization or digital platforms is not so laid down in a well organized manner in the country. So therefore, this will be probably be a key area of focus for lawmakers and regulators of the country. So this is something that we need to expect in time to come with these new trends and changes in the regulatory, rather the industry frameworks. So that brings to the end of my lining up for the information for you all today. So thank you so much, and over to you, Ruan.
Thanks, Chalendra. I think foods is a major part of FMCG. So you were talking about the regulatory framework of food and beverages, and the changes that are happening in the region as well as around the globe, where there are a few trends that are seen, like nourishing the body and mind, the sustainability aspect of it, the boom in plant-based proteins and products, and then consumers wanting to have more information on the product for the suppliers or manufacturers to be more transparent, so that the consumers will build trust on it, and finally you hopped upon the digital transformation aspects also. Chalendra, in the last year we have seen some changes. In fact, the attitude towards some of the regulations also have got a little changed in 2020, where we have seen some time extensions being given, being flexible on certain regulations. At the same time, we have seen some, as Damit and Charita also mentioned, there were import restrictions also coming in to protect the exchange rate and the local industry as well. So what do you foresee in the 2021 and beyond in terms of food regulations in Sri Lanka as well as in the region?
Yes, Ruan. So for that question, I'll make an opening with what we experienced in 2020 itself. So in 2020, we main four regulations or main four implementations came, like the premises registration regulation, then the food general additives regulation, then the food antioxidants regulation, and the implementation of the color coding. And all these regulations were demanding certain changes in the infrastructure, as well as changes in the packaging, which was involved a huge cost factor, as well as with the pandemic situation, there was certain restrictions for the industry also to implement them on time. However, like you correctly said, the authorities also understood, and they're being much flexible on the current situation. Certain implementation deadlines were brought to the coming years. So 2021, we foresee mainly three regulations to come in early of this year. That is the labeling and advertising regulation, then the color coding for the sugar in beverages, the liquid foods, and the milk regulation. Among these three, I would say the labeling and advertising regulation is a mega one because it will affect entirely the industry, the way we label, the way we advertise, and it will be a massive change in certain contexts. So I know you also are part of the industrial associations representing the authority forums, and there will definitely be sort of a fair amount of lead time for the industry to adapt these new changes into their packaging and claims, the communications. Those are the summary I would like to highlight here.
Thank you very much, Chalit. And with that answer, I would like to open the forum for questions from the audience. Let me start with this question to Charita. In fact, there is a comment that in the current situation, there is a drop in earnings, especially in the low and middle income classes. So even though we expect, in terms of health perspective, we expect things to be back into normal with the vaccination and program and so on and so forth. But because of these financial constraints, I mean, if the consumers will have less disposable income, then how would that affect the overall consumer behavior, Charita, as you see?
Yeah, I saw that Devika's comment. Love the terminology she has used from her airline background, pack spend. In the retail terminology, we say the average basket size. You're right there, Devika. I mean, very honestly, one thing that did happen over the last few years, very honestly, with the consumer confidence downturn over the last few years. One area that got impacted quite significantly was the average basket size, where people were spending much lesser than what or simply because of the income reduction as well. One thing that we see, Devika, is that coming from agreed, it's a income level impact as well. But there, in the Sri Lankan context, the consumer confidence too plays a significant role in the consumption. There is a direct correlation. If you look at it, LMD provides the monthly consumer confidence index, which we actually, as a retailer, we see a significant correlation there. And as a Sri Lankan, confidence plays a significant role. If there is some confidence that things are going to be better, if there's confidence that things will improve, that is the time that the Sri Lankan consumer also does spend feeling good. That is bound to happen world over as well. There's that pent-up demand, that feel of the confidence not being there, that we think would improve with the overall situation in the country. If the vaccination program comes through, that is going to have a positive impact to build up the confidence. Then, as I mentioned, GDP today, 2020, had a significant dip. So with that, there was a reduction in the overall confidence as well as the consumption as well. But on that base, there's bound to be an increase unless something goes absolutely south and that goes down further. So that the GDP increase overall against this lower baseline now has to go up. And so will the disposable income, the income generation. I mean, this 2020, if you look at it, most of the organizations did have a salary cut, people lost their jobs, whatever. What we think is that against that base, there has to be some growth, and that will drive the confidence as well as the driven by the income generation to all that. So that is what we think would also happen in 2021 for that overall spend to also take place. So that's how we will look at it, Devika, very honestly.
Thanks, Charit. I think you have explained it was very well. With that, I will move to the next question. In fact, I also wanted to ask this question from Tamit. Tamit, there is a request to explain the lighthouse concept a bit more in about a couple of minutes.
Yes. All right. So when you look at manufacturing sector compared to other areas, right? So we are lagging behind when it comes to digitizing. One main reason is, right? So intent of digitizing of the using the AI, robotics, and all. Probably, the delighting our customer kind of aspects, or the improving the quality or improving the safety, these kind of aspects, achieving those aspects looks straightforward, but making it financially viable is always a challenge, right? Because of that, predominantly you see globally the manufacturing sector is lagging behind when it comes to excelling in digitization, right? To overcome this, I think World Economic Forum, they have formed this global lighthouse network. We are picking examples who are leading or excelling in digitization while making it financially feasible, right? So while delivering other business results, the factories or the manufacturing, the businesses who made it financially feasible, right? So that gives some the stimulation or some encouragement to rest of the industry to follow them, right? So, and I think these industries, they are collaborating with others, they are giving the showing the examples and all, right, to encourage the rest of the industry. So there was a governing mechanisms. I think that so if we Google, we can find a lot of details relate this, right? So currently 54 sites they have picked, mostly related to Facebook, Amazon, these kind of companies, and now a couple of related to Unilever as well. So where the difference is, these guys have, they are living the fourth industrial revolution, and by all their investment, they made sure that those are financially viable as well, right? So that's the art they have, or the challenge they have cracked. So that's why I think globally showing those examples, so others also can follow and get learning and implement those.
Right. Thanks, Damit. The next question I would like to open to
Ruan,
all three.
can I add something on what Damit
Yes.
also said, Ruan?
Yes,
This
please.
talking about digitization to all that. I think while sometimes as Sri Lankan organizations, we may think that it's quite beyond us to whatever, it is not so. And while there will be a certain investment that would need to come, you could look at it from a journey. You don't need to go and invest in the Rolls Royce that you cannot afford, but if you could picture a journey, a roadmap, and start that investment in some form or shape, it is bound to help. The productivity part that Damit talked about, the fourth, the industrial revolution, about how digitization could help in productivity on one aspect, as well as on the other aspect in terms of customer satisfaction, data analytics, to all that. It has a significant benefit for the long term. It's something that we at retail also started about 2 years ago in the data analytics to all that. And the stuff that we did leading up to the lockdown helped us during that difficult period as well. Basically, it's a case of then doing the right things, resourcing for the right areas, and through that also gives you the overall return as well. So it's something that as Sri Lankan entrepreneurs, manufacturers and retailers that we should not dismiss it, but it's something that we should look at what can be, and there will be certain low-hanging fruits that we can go after. And that will give you a desired ROI immediately. And thereafter you can go for the next phases as well. I think something that we should work on and to ensure that it's important that eyes are opened and a roadmap put in place. That's what I would like to add on to what Damit said, Ruan.
Thanks, Charit, for adding that, and I totally agree with you. Yes, we have ways of responding to each of those situations, and I see that there are a lot of interesting questions coming up, but I mean, we always live with constraints, and the allocated time is up. So therefore, I will have to wrap up the discussion now, and would like to thank all the three presenters, Charita Subasinghe, Damit Aberatne, and Chalindra Pratirana, for taking your time out of busy schedule to educate us on the trend shaping FMCG industry in Sri Lanka as well as in the region. So with that note, I would like to thank the presenter, the audience also for taking part, and I wish you safety and good health. Stay blessed. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rohan.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.